Hi, and welcome back to the Mind and Wellness Podcast with me, Gemma Merna. So, this episode, we are going to focus on nutrition. So, we've got Dale Pinnock here, and he is the medicinal chef. He's a nutritionist and a best-selling author. So, welcome, Dale.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, looking forward to this one.
I am really excited about this, and that intro was long. Did I miss anything off, or did I do all right?
A couple of things,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'll forgive you. I'll let you off. Yeah.
All right, just drop them in.
That was the condensed version. Yeah.
Just drop them in as we have this conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for joining us. So with Mind and Wellness, we're all about the mind, the body, soul connection, and nutrition is a huge part of that.
Fundamental.
But what I have found with working with clients, people really struggle and people don't really know where to start because there's so much information.
Yes.
So that's one of them. But what I really want to focus on is how you are doing this work now. I love people's stories and how they got where they are. So
I think, like most people that get into nutrition or many of the areas within wellness, it was my own struggles that led me there. I don't think many people are at school and sit there and think, yeah. When I get older, I want to teach people to eat salad. It's a calling really. And usually it's as people are going through their own challenges. For me, I had really bad acne from the age of about 10 or 11. It was the summer of leaving primary school to go up to secondary school. That time in your life when you just start to get self-aware, especially in relation to your peers. And I looked like I've been shot in the face with a blunderbuss. It was awful. It really, really flared up almost overnight during that summer holiday. And I went to so many different specialists and practitioners and dermatologists, had every manner of lotion and potion you could possibly imagine. And nothing really made that much of a difference. Got to about 15 years old, sat around at my friend's house one night, feeling sorry for myself, moaning about the state of my skin. And his mum came in and lent me this book. And it's a book called Fit for Life by Harvey Diamond, proper old school diet classic from the 80s. And she said, unless you sort out what's going on the inside, nothing's going to change on the outside. And obviously, as a 15-year-old boy in 1992, I was kind of like, okay. But I read this thing cover to cover in a weekend because I was ready to do anything at that point. Read this thing cover to cover, and that's when there was the light bulb moment. That's when I realized that I wasn't passive in this process. I could actively engage in my own healthcare by the choices that I was making in relation to my lifestyle. And to give you an idea, I grew up in the rave scene. So lifestyle was kind of colorful, right? And in those days, it was a very, very strange thing to do to actually eat healthy food. I mean,
that's what I was about to say to you. Like at 15, getting that book, most 15-year-olds wouldn't have even read it.
Well, not now. Okay. Everyone wants to be like an Instagram wellness influencer from the age of about 9. So now it's the norm. But to give you an idea, the internet didn't exist then. Social media, thank God, didn't exist then. So it was a very, very different time, and it was a very tiny subculture. There was you'd occasionally see a vegetarian cafe out in some backwater, or if you happen to be in Brighton for the day, you might kind of see things relating to it, but it was very alien. So to get switched onto this at that time and at that age, I was quite fortunate, but I started changing my diet dramatically. Obviously skin improved, but so many other aspects of my health improved, particularly cognitive function.
Really?
It's literally like I had a perception upgrade. That's the only way I can describe it, because everything just started firing on all cylinders and I became hooked. And I read over 1,000 books. I used myself as a guinea pig. I tried every diet on the planet, put myself in hospital twice, conversation for another day.
Okay. I will go into that
one. But then, decided to study it. So I did my first degree in human nutrition, second degree in herbal medicine, and a master's degree in nutritional medicine.
Wow.
And then I've been cooking all my life as well. So the name The Medicinal Chef came from the fact that I use the preparation of food as the teaching vehicle. And my area of interest is how diet and nutrition can be used as a therapeutic tool. So if you've got hypertension or high cholesterol or type 2 diabetes or whatever, the specific dietary modifications that you would make to actually suit your health needs. and then translating that into the preparation of food so people actually know what to do
Yeah.
rather than just standing there talking about eat more of this and less of that. It's actually something that is engaging, and it puts it in a practical framework that people can start to use straight away.
Totally, because like you said, we get all this information, do this, do that, eat this, eat that. Oh, actually don't eat that now. Don't, don't drink that now. So it becomes so confusing. And, I'm all about the mind, inner body, work to outer, but I still get confused by nutrition
Yeah.
myself. And I still jump on, I wouldn't say like diets or anything like that, but different people's advice.
Yeah.
And I find it really hard. So what would you say, like, what were the first things you did that you started to make those changes when you said you noticed improvement in your skin and everything? What were those like basic things that you started to change?
Those basic things are still the things that I do today. I've been doing it for, nearly 32 years now. Since that day. And that's just moving over to a whole foods diet. This is one key thing, and this is something that hopefully should help people to move onto the right path. There are so many different diets out there. As you just said, there are so many different approaches to diet that are dramatically opposed to each other. They're almost like opposite ends of the spectrum. You've got a raw food diet, you've got macrobiotic diet, you've got a paleo diet, you've got a carnivore diet, you've got a totally plant-based diet. All of these are dramatically different, yet every single one, you see these reports of dramatic health transformations, people losing weight, people reversing or halting degenerative disease. How on earth does that make sense if all these diets are so different to one another? Well, here's the key. Here's the kicker. Every single one of those diets is unified by one single factor. They all leave out the rubbish that makes us sick in the first place. There's not one of those diets that's just like, yep, you need to go down to the burger joint 3 times a day. You need to build your diet around pizza and beer and you'll be totally fine.
Yeah.
All of them are cutting out ultra-processed rubbish.
Yeah.
And they're all built around whole foods. Yes, the composition of those diets are dramatically different, but they are all opting for whole foods over ultra-processed rubbish. And that ultimately is the key.
Yeah, you're so right. It is ultimately the key, but process has become so easy for people. And then the busier people have become, the easier they think in their mind.
Only because we're being sold that ideal.
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. And it's marketing.
Listen, being unhealthy and knackered is very inconvenient.
Yeah.
And if you think you're being productive when you're eating like that, just see how productive you can be when you're firing on all cylinders.
Yes.
It'll change your world.
Yeah.
We're being sold this idea that none of us got any time. Oh, no time to do that. Oh, it needs to be convenient. Oh, don't you worry about doing it. Let us take care of it. We're being sold that. I mean, it's being reinforced all the time. And it's like, modern life is mental, but there's always a way. There's always time. Even if it's batch cooking. I mean, the show that I did, Eat, Shop, Save, one of the things that was featured in every episode across 5 series over and over was batch cooking.
Yeah.
For people that are juggling careers and families and all those kind of things, if you've got a Sunday afternoon free, or if it's a Wednesday afternoon, whatever, if you've got a little block of time, how about you cook up some of the family favorites that you maybe prepared during the week, but you do it in 3, 4, 5 times the volume. You get little containers, portion it out into individual portions, bang it in the freezer. You start to stockpile the freezer with all those healthy options. If you know that you're going to have a mad day, or if every day is a mad day, in the morning you take out what you want, leave it in the fridge. You come back from work, you've picked the kids up, everyone's home, everyone's sorted. That food is defrosted. You warm it up. You open a bag of salad. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. It's done. Yes, it takes a little bit of preparation. It takes a little bit of organisation. But come on, we've got to be able to do something for ourselves, right?
Totally.
And that's also a really good thing. I mean, in this current climate as well, where we're all being pushed in terms of the cost of everything and our money isn't going as far. I'm a real fan of looking on the reduced aisle for what's there and then taking that home that day and then doing your batch cooking. So if you prepare it then you freeze it, that's going to last.
And what a brilliant idea. Because don't you think as well, like media, marketing, everything kind of says healthy food's more expensive.
Yeah,
untrue. It's so untrue, isn't it?
Yeah,
because vegetables aren't.
it's
compared
bizarre, isn't it?
to buying something that's already already prepped and made, like you're saying, pizza and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I just don't actually get that. And I'm not like the most saintful, with my food. I'm not. I really need your help, actually.
Okay.
But it's like, I just don't get that. And I don't understand why people believe that more than what you're saying. Like, go to those aisles, try and find it
Yeah.
and batch cook and,
Absolutely.
get back to that thing of cooking with your kids
Yeah.
as well and your family.
Absolutely.
Like,
If you want a fast track to more compliance with healthier food, get the kids involved. Because as soon as they've got an emotional involvement in the preparation of that food, it means more to them. It's like when they bring home a picture and they want you to put it up. There's that
Yeah.
emotional connection to it. If they've been involved in that creative process and that's an expression of their creativity, they're going
Yeah.
to be engaged in it every time. It just makes such a difference.
It does.
It's just
And
how they're wired. Yeah.
it's so weird. And I don't know if it's something, I don't have children, so I can't really be too opinionated on this. But I noticed kids just being given like fish fingers and chips or, like chicken nuggets and chips. I like, if I had children, they'd be having better food than
Yeah.
me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it would be vegetables, good meats, good carbohydrates and stuff, and cook that for them. I don't understand why kids only eat that. Like, what do you think on that as well with
It's
like
bizarre.
nutrition? Like, do you think it's like you said, that they get into habits and then it's just a convenience for parents to kind of go, oh, just have that? Like, how would you change it? Like, if there was a parent listening to this, like, how would you change that kind of behavior for your children as well to get them to eat better food? And because kids have very strong opinions from very young ages now,
That's the
don't
key.
they?
That's the
And
key.
I think parents give in to that as well.
There's a couple of ways of looking at this, right?
Mm,
Obviously, if you're this way inclined from day one, from the day you start weaning, then you can start weaning them on to whole food straight away. And if that's all they know, they will have their favourites out of that selection of food.
yeah.
If, as soon as they've started eating solid food, it's been these kind of processed foods which really do stimulate all the reward centers in the brain. I mean, they're like dopamine overload, those kinds of foods. When you've got the perfect combination of like salt, fat, and sugar in a
Yeah.
food, that will light up the dopamine centers in the brain like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you've instilled that level of desire in a little person that literally hasn't
Yeah.
got that part of their brain where they can look beyond the immediate moment and the immediate reward seeking behavior, then all hell's going to break loose.
Mm,
So obviously if you start them off on whole foods, they're always going to have a taste for that.
yeah.
But not every, I'm a realist. Not everyone's going to be.
Yeah.
It's only as the kids get older, they start to think, we should probably get them onto some better food. In that case, what I will say to parents is like, right, okay, what are their favorites? Give their favorites a facelift. And I'll tell you a story about on Eat Shop Save. Actually, there was this little girl called Fallon. Now she was an absolute fussy eater.
Mm-hmm.
She probably had about like 8 foods that she would eat, and everything else she was having none of it. One meal that she would always eat would be a chicken curry. So I was
Okay.
like, right, there's our chance. And what we did, we started off, we cooked up garlic, red onions, carrots, sweet potatoes, then put a little bit of veg stock in it as though we were making a soup. Excuse me, but doing it like a very thick soup. Pureed it up.
Yeah.
So already it's bright orange. Then we just added some curry spices to it. That became like a curry sauce. And then we cooked the chicken in that sauce. And because it was chicken korma that she always loved, we got this dish and it was basically looked like a chicken korma. And it had the sweetness from the sweet potato. And it had like, just the right amount of spice in it to give it that same flavor profile. She absolutely loved it. And then, but like after she finished it was like, you just ate veg.
And she didn't even know.
No, she was like, that was really nice. So
And what did she say? Did she carry on eating it, or did she change?
She was like, oh, I'll eat it when it tastes like that. So ethical hoodwinking. That's what I say. Ethical hoodwinking. So another great one. Sorry, just before we jump into that is pasta sauce. If they'll eat pasta and tomato sauce, you're golden. Cook up onion, some courgettes, red peppers, maybe some fresh tomatoes, bit of spinach. Cook it all down until it's soft.
Yeah.
Add tomato passata in there.
Yeah.
And then puree it all up.
Yeah.
looks, tastes, feels, smells like a regular tomato sauce, but it's got all of those veg in there. You can use that on homemade pizzas. You can use that to make lasagnas. You can use that to make spaghetti bolognese. You can use that to make pasta and tomato
Yeah.
sauce. And you're getting that good stuff in there. They never even have to know. No more warfare at mealtime.
It's so interesting because there's so much connection. So I'm a hypnotherapist, and there's the connection that we run on programs that we've learned between 1 and 7, and we've learned these programs from our parents, from our grandparents, and it happens with food, doesn't it? With kids.
With everything, yeah.
And us as I know I've got to a certain age, and I was obsessed with nutrition in my early kind of 20s. And then the older I've got, I've become lazier because and I think it's the program from my parents. Do you know what I mean? Because I didn't get taught how to cook when I was younger, and so nothing against my mum if she's listening to this, bless her. But she admits it. But I've noticed when I've got to a certain age, that program started to kick in.
Yeah.
And this is what happens with kids. Like you find that or adults, they've got the same dislikes to food as a parent, and it's a program.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's not the fact that they don't necessarily like the food, it's just a habit that they've gone into. And like what you're saying,
you bypass it.
Yeah, you're hiding the veg in there, they've ate it and gone, oh yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, but you've not ate that for how many years? It's so hard for parents, obviously, with children, but for adults as well. They're not getting enough nutrition, what they need, because I don't like that. But that's not really maybe something that they've learned to offer parents.
Yeah, I still apply the same thing. Like I still say, give your favorites a facelift. That's what I'll say. It's like recreate your favorite things. Just learn ways to actually make the right tweaks that are going to make the right amount of difference. And it's something as simple as, I will say, swap the white for the brown. So like, say for example, using pasta again as the example. Yeah. You love spaghetti bolognese, fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so when you're cooking the ragu, maybe let's bulk out the beef with some red lentils as well, or maybe some very, very finely chopped veg. So you've increased the fiber and the micronutrients. Swap the white pasta for a whole wheat pasta. It's going to taste basically exactly the same. There's going to be no detectable difference in there, but from a nutritional point of view and from a biochemical response to that food point of view, it's going to be dramatically different. And it's understanding what are the right tweaks to make in the right way so that you can still enjoy your favorite food. Because listen, if you just give up everything you love, then that could work if you're a complete masochist and just like flagellating yourself. But for most people, it's going to be like 2 or 3 weeks in, and then like the recalcitrant teenager that lives inside us all is just going to come rushing to the surface and go into rebellion mode, and you're going to go completely mental. You're going to go to the pizza joint, you're going to go to the pub, you're going to do all of it in that kind of rebellion, because that's just how we're wired. Totally. And as soon as you start telling yourself, I can't have that, then, for me, I'm kind of like, I choose not to. Or to be honest, I've been doing this stuff so long, it's just like, I don't do that.
Yeah.
That just doesn't come into my orbit.
It's just more there's a few ways I want to go with this, really. But I think when I ran the marathon, I had to start eating more food to fuel me to run. And from that moment, I think I realized, and I don't think I've ever really put it together, because I think I've always been on a weight loss eating habit I've got myself into from a young age, from, working with PTs, being on the show, you know what I mean? I got into it. And when I did the marathon, I noticed that I had to start eating a lot more food.
Yeah.
But the one thing I think that healed me in the sense of my relationship with food was I was so switched on. Like you said, your brain, I was like, this is when my business started to work. Ideas were flowing to me. And it was all because of the food I was eating.
Better quality food in the right amounts. This whole idea of eat less, move more needs to get in the bin, right? It needs to do one and shut the door on its way out, because it's nonsensical. It's like if you want to drive 50 miles and you put enough fuel in the car to do 25, you wouldn't be standing there on the side of the M1 scratching your head because your car's conked out. You'd be like, I just don't know. I don't understand what's happened. Yeah. But yet we're demanding that of our bodies when we're looking at weight management from that point of view. this whole calorie model, whilst calories are a relatively useful metric in some respects, as a sole focal point, they're as good as useless.
Yeah.
Because what we need to remember is we are not a combustion engine. You know, the calories in, calories out doesn't always compute. You've got things like caloric availability. Well, to give you an idea, I'll give you an example how this works. Right, we're going to go down the rabbit hole with this.
No, I love
this.
this.
This is such a soapbox thing for me.
But this is great. This is what people need to know instead of like the fitness industry go calories in, calories out, and be in a deficit and eat all this kind of aspartame and rubbish protein bars and stuff to get your protein up. So
things like caloric availability. So, do you know how calories are measured?
No, go on.
So you take a sample of food, you place it into a container. That container sits inside a bath filled with water. That food sample is then incinerated to ash. And in that combustion reaction, the heat that's generated is the energy being released from all of the bonds within that food sample. Now, that releases a certain amount of energy, and 1 calorie is the amount of energy it takes to raise 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily add up to the amount of calories that your body can extract from it during normal physiological process of digestion. Okay. So some foods incredibly high in fiber. There can be certain nutrients, certain energy yielding nutrients or energy yielding components of that food that are so bound within complex fibers, they'll never get liberated during digestion. They will come out the other end intact. I mean, I've checked. Ash has never come out of me. I've had a few curries that I felt were going to take me close, but never has that ever happened. So it goes to show that there are components that wouldn't have the opportunity to yield all the energy that they contain. So when you're looking at those values on a label, that doesn't automatically equate to what your body can gain from it. So that's one part of the picture. But then also, you've got to realize that, I mean, if we're talking purely fat loss, fat is a tissue, as any other body tissue does. Fat is controlled and regulated by hormonal signals. Yeah. So different foods will have different physiological impacts on our body, regardless of their caloric value. 100 calories worth of broccoli, 100 calories worth of chocolate, 100 calories worth of butter, all will be dramatically different. Or even if we take it right back to the basics, 100 calories of protein, 100 calories of carbohydrates, 100 calories of fats. Whilst from that energy point of view, they're the same. In terms of the actual physiological response in the body, it will be dramatically different. So, you know, things like, so to give you one example, with very, very simple carbohydrates, like white pasta. So you had a bowl of white pasta. Because that's a very, very concentrated source of glucose with very little dietary fiber present, it doesn't take much work for your body to liberate that glucose. So what that means is your blood sugar goes up very high very quickly. Now, when our blood sugar goes up, the body responds by releasing the hormone insulin. Insulin will bind to an insulin receptor on the surface of our cells, and it will open a little doorway called a glucose transporter that allows our cells to take in some of that glucose load and use to manufacture ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is what our cells run on. The thing is, cells have got a cutoff point. They can only handle so much glucose in one sitting, and they don't allow themselves to take on any more because it will have the potential to cause damage. So once they're full, once they're at capacity, they will shut the door. They will shut the glucose transporter, and it will not open for love nor money. It will stay there until they've actually been able to deal with the glucose load that they have. If the blood glucose is still above the safe parameters, because an important thing to mention, blood glucose that's too high or too low, these are both life-threatening states. So if we go outside of those upper or lower parameters, the body will respond in multiple ways to get us back to equilibrium. So step one, the cells take up as much as they can. When they're full and blood glucose is still above that upper safe level, the next thing that happens is we will actually store some in the form of glycogen. Glycogen is stored in the liver and within the skeletal muscle, but we only have a very finite capacity to store glycogen. So once our cells are full, once glycogen stores are full, if blood glucose is still above the safe level, it has to be dealt with. That's a potentially life-threatening state. The body doesn't muck about. It doesn't give a monkeys how many calories are there. It's like, this needs to be shuttled out the way because this substrate, this substance has the potential to cause damage. So it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be removed. So it gets sent to the liver. This excess will get sent to the liver. Yeah. It will then get converted into triglycerides. Triglycerides are fats that we can store. So these get sent straight to the adipose tissue, particularly around the middle. Okay, so what's happened there? You've got an increase in volume in the fat cells, so you start to put on weight. But also, those fats are traveling to the fat tissue via the cardiovascular system, so it's also sending you triglycerides and your LDL cholesterol up. Yeah. So that will happen. That excess will be stored regardless of caloric value, because that is a physiological response to the. I will say to people, don't get caught up with calories. Substrate is king. So for anyone that's not done chemistry, substrate is the thing that you feed into a process or a reaction, the starting point. Yeah. So the starting point being glucose. If there's too much of it, it needs to be dealt with in a certain way and gotten out of the way, regardless of what the caloric value is. It's how it's influencing physiology in the immediacy, in that moment. Okay, if you had that same amount of calories from fat, you wouldn't get the same insulin response. You still might have the potential to put on a little bit fat, because one of the things that happens after we eat fat is we get something called postprandial lipemia, which is where blood concentrations of fat go up. But depending on what the rest of your diet looks like, that doesn't necessarily cause a problem. We could go down these rabbit holes for hours, but the important point that I'm really trying to illustrate is that the composition of the diet is far more important than caloric value. And it goes right back to everything we started speaking about right at the beginning, which is it's just about moving over to whole foods and cutting out the processed rubbish that's making us sick in the first place. If you're building your diet around fruit, veg, nuts, seeds, whole grains, fish, good quality cuts of meat, or plant-based proteins, if that's your, if that's your thing, then all of these issues and all of those kind of mechanisms that I just spoke about aren't ever going to matter, because the things that create that kind of response in the body aren't going to be there in the first place. And weight management will become a breeze.
Totally. And it's, when you say it like that, if we, build our nutrition, our food around that, it's simple, isn't it?
It is.
But we have so much conflicting stuff, but people like to listen. And it's this whole protein thing, protein bars, sugar, high glucose within them and things. And people are living off this sort of stuff to count their calories on MyFitnessPal. And you know what? By doing stuff like that, that really affected my mind in a way, because I was like, oh, I'm not in my calories and stuff. And then it makes you not enjoy your food. And this is why I wanted to kind of do this episode, to kind of get people to realize that we don't need to be counting calories all the time. We don't need to be over moving our body. And like you said, not eating enough, because I felt like that. If I don't eat enough, I'm one of those people, I need to eat a lot of food.
Same as. Yeah.
Otherwise, I get dizzy and I faint. Yeah. But when people look at it in a calorie, they're like, you can't have that much. But I'm like, but my body needs that, okay? That's what I've kind of learned over the years. My body needs it. My body needs good carbohydrates to function off. I can't just up my protein and drop my carbs, because I feel terrible. That's how my body works. Okay, I might be different to your other client, but that's it. And I think this is what we need to realize, that we've all got to get to know our own bodies, how they work, our own minds, and what works for us. But base it around all that good nutrition that you've just listed.
Exactly. And if someone came to me, like in my own clinical practice, and they had multiple markers of poor metabolic health, I probably would put them on a very low carbohydrate diet for a while, until a lot of those physiological systems had started to recover and started to respond better. And then we start moving them back to like a more, what we call like a macro balance kind of diet. But I'm the same as you. I mean, I train like an absolute demon. I'm not far off 50 now, right? And if I didn't eat in absolute abundance, there's no way that I'd be able to train the way that I could. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people that are my age that I went to school with that couldn't train like that.
Yeah.
and eating for performance is very, very different from people that are inactive. And you try to train properly.
Yeah.
I mean, not just like go, woo, for a couple of little weights, but actually train properly and be in this kind of starvation type diet that's being promoted to so many people.
Yeah.
You know, you're just going to crash and burn like really quickly.
Totally.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's when I realized it, when I was training for the marathon. I was like, I can't eat all this food, but when I did, I felt fantastic, and my performance was so much better. Like my runs were so much better, my strength training was so much better, my work was so much. That's the thing that it got me. I was like, I know it might sound really silly to anybody listening, but I think, you know, I grew up in a stage of my life where it was about image and look. So food was just like, you know, I remember trying to get on a red carpet. It was don't eat all week and run on a treadmill to get in a dress. It's crazy. And I don't think I ever realized until I did the marathon. I was like, oh my God, food is so connected to your brain health. And I'm so obsessed with brain health. I'm so obsessed with us living our best life we can through meditation, breath work. And it just unlocked something for me when I did do the training and was eating so much more food, better food, and I felt fantastic. And also I was training for performance, not the look, not the external look.
Exactly.
And that was another big breakthrough.
Yeah, it's bizarre being in that kind of world. Obviously, I've done a lot of television and stuff like that, but it's not the same degree of pressure than like being in soap, especially a soap that has like a younger audience as well. I've heard some of the horror stories of the kind of pressure that people are under to have a specific look. Or one of the worst things I ever witnessed, I once worked as the nutritionist for Erin O'Collar's model sanctuary during London Fashion Week.
Okay.
And some of the models that were coming in and just having some downtime, I'd say the average age was between 15 and 19. And they would come and have a nutrition consultation. So I was there, I would just do nutrition consultations for them all day. They'd sit there and they were, you know, listening to things that were going on. And I said, start talking about their diet. Like, okay, what have you eaten today? Oh, I've had a coffee. And this was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, what? Like, I've got a casting later, so I can't look like I've got anything inside me. And it's like, seriously? You know, I mean, this was probably a good 14, 15 years ago. And I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, to be honest, how things would have changed. But when people are following that kind of diet, it's so damaging on so many levels. Not only to, well, the fact that they're barely able to function, but immune function starts to wane. And then you were talking about the effect on the brain. It's when people start eating properly again, it's like the brain illuminates. And so many people overlook the fact that our brain and nervous system is a physiological system. And as such, it's got its own specific nutritional requirements. And if they're not met, then that system, like any other system, will start to wane and start to falter. And when you get that balance right, when you're taking a good amount of fatty acids and the right minerals and the right balance of carbohydrates and proteins and stuff, the difference that it can make to your mood, your ability to process things, but also your experience of the world, because the brain and the nervous system, that's the aperture that you kind of process everything that's happening around you through.
Yeah.
And the better that's working, the better your experience on the planet is. And I know that might sound a little bit hokey or a little bit hyperbolic, but it's true.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think this is the way, though, that people need to understand this is what nutrition does for you. You know, and this is what I'm probably trying to get across really by doing this podcast and other podcasts, that we do not need to look at nutrition as the easy, quick thing to buy in the supermarket to eat. We need to kind of take it back to basics, but also kind of nutrition's not just about for how your external body's going to look, if you're going to lose weight or not, or put weight on. It's about it making your body function to the best of its ability, as well as your brain and your brain health. And I just love people to kind of think of it more that way, because I think when that happened for me, that's when I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is why I've got to look after myself.
I mean, the links between diet and anxiety, enormous. Links between
That's
diet and
so
depression,
interesting.
absolutely huge. Good friend of mine, Dr. Alex Richardson, she did a lot of the original research on dietary fats and the prevention and management of ADHD, schizophrenia. There's so many incredible links, and there's a
Wow.
vast body of research. And we're talking large scale, double blind, randomized, placebo controlled trials that have shown that there are components in our diet that can either prevent or effectively manage so many of the mental health issues that are around today. Of course, it's not like a magic bullet, because it's fair to
Yeah.
say that modern society is pretty mashed up, and it's no wonder that we're kind of
Mm.
having the mental challenges that we are, especially the last couple of years. That was fun. Um, But at least, what I always say is, like, at least if that system is working optimally, you
Mm.
stand the best chance to have resilience. It just increases your resilience. So with anxiety, for example, there something as simple as the mineral magnesium. Okay.
Mm.
Magnesium increases the production of a neurotransmitter called GABA. GABA is the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. We've got some neurotransmitters that are excitatory, and then we've got other neurotransmitters that are inhibitory.
Mm-hmm.
GABA is the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, which means it calms everything down. If you're in the middle of an anxious episode and you're in that kind of sympathetic
Mm.
state, where the heart's racing, your blood pressure's going up, your mind's starting to go a million miles an hour, your breathing's more shallow. If you get an elevation in GABA, that flicks the switch the opposite direction. So all of that starts to come back
Yeah.
down. And that's in things like leafy green vegetables, oily fish,
Mm.
nuts and seeds. You can even take magnesium supplements. Some of my own patients, we've just given them magnesium supplements. They take around everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They feel that they're starting to get into a situation that would normally be a problem for them.
Mm.
They'll take some magnesium, they'll have 2 minutes, and then boom, they're back in the room.
And that's so interesting because most of the clients that I work with, anxiety, overwhelm, stress, I suffered with anxiety for many, many years.
Yeah,
And that's why I do what I do now.
yeah,
Because my body just used to take over. So it would go into fight or flight straight away. And it would just shake and I couldn't control it. So then that's why I got so interested in the brain and doing breathing techniques and meditation,
yeah,
because then I felt like I could control the symptoms, you
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? So
absolutely.
it's so interesting listening from your side of things, of how then the nutrition and the supplements can then do exactly the same thing as what I'm doing, but in a different way.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, if we bring all of this together through, mindset, through nutrition,
Mhm.
through, hydration,
Yes.
through movement, we're all going to be living such a better, healthier, more happier life.
Yeah.
But it's education. It's just us educating ourselves on it and not just taking the advice of, the marketing
This
out
is a
of
weird
there.
thing. I mean, like, as I said right at the beginning, it was a seldom talked about thing in the 90s when I got into
Mm,
this, in the early 90s. But now, I always knew that nutrition and wellness was going to get more popular, and that people would get more switched onto it, and the penny would finally drop and people
yeah.
would realize how important it was. I never really expected it to become as entwined with popular culture as it has. And I never thought in a million lifetimes that kale would become like the star of Instagram, an aspirational lifestyle thing. It's just like,
Mm,
you can tell how well someone's doing by the amount of avocados they eat, that kind of
yeah.
stuff. I never thought that was going to happen. So because it became entwined with fashion and with the kind of glossy media, so much of its value has been diluted into this. This is why I never like giving superficial answers to questions, because it
Mm,
is it's the thing that makes my blood boil. Like,
mm,
it's all dampened down. It's like the amount of times I've sat there having conversations with journalists, and they were like, "I need to put it a little bit more basic than that, because people won't understand." It's like, give people some flipping credit, will you?
yeah.
It's like if we dumb it down all the time, then what's the result going to be?
Mm.
It's going to be people with a dumbed down understanding of one of the most important things, how to look
Yes.
after yourself. So that's where so much of it has gone
Yeah.
wrong, is the fact that people have jumped on fads for fashion's sake, or for likes,
Mm-hmm.
or, to get an online presence. People have published material that they're scared to go into any kind of depth with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just created a level to wellness that some people, many people, I would say, feel that it's just a little bit airy-fairy and it's a load of nonsense. When you actually get into the science of it, I've, like I say, dedicated over 30 years of my life to this, 2 undergrad degrees and a master's. I know the evidence base that's behind some of this stuff. And this is the weird thing, we're going back to the calories again, and the PTs, like you see these quite well-known PTs on social media making videos, calling out people that are saying that calories aren't that important. And it's just like, oh, well, they've got, they're just a PT. And I'm not, not dissing anyone, by the way. Like, I'm just, if they're saying they've not studied nutrition, whereas all of the nutritional scientists, people like myself, people like Dr. Alex Richardson, Professor Tim Spector, Dr. Giles Yeo, some of the top nutritional scientists in the country, they're all saying, look, the calorie thing's nonsense. We need to look at the bigger picture. When you see the evidence base that's there, and as more of that starts to filter into the public arena, I think people's attitudes towards the information will start to change. I certainly, and pardon the pun, but I certainly think people are hungry for information now, and they're more inclined to seek out people that have actually got qualifications and long-standing credibility in the industry to get their information, rather than someone who's drinking out of a coconut in Barbados or whatever, which is what it was 10 years ago. It was very, very superficial. So it's changing, and I think people are being much more discerning in terms of where they're getting their information from, and that can only improve things. Because once people start getting better quality information, especially good quality information that they can actually implement, then, hopefully we'll start to see that reflected in public health. But we do need all the help that we can get at the minute. And this, again, this isn't coming from a place of judgment. It's just like, this is reality. So it is what it is. You look at photographs of, any gathering of British people from the 1950s. And you look at the body composition, and you look at how healthy people seemed, and you compare it to where most people are at now. Something's gone very, very wrong in our food system, in our society, that is just pulling people further and further away from health. And it's something that can be so easily addressed when we're armed with the right information. So I'm hoping that as more of this gains momentum in the public arena, especially good quality, evidence-based, actionable information, we'll start to see some change on a public health level.
I totally agree with you, because you look back to like the 1950s, as you were saying, like people cooked whole foods. We didn't have processed foods there. You know what I mean? Like, just didn't.
No.
People would cook for themselves, their families, and it would always start off with potatoes, vegetables. You know what I mean? It would start with that
proper food,
and proper food. We didn't have you could just go and get something pre-made. So I think it's that, number one. I think let that click in people's mind, and anyone who's listening to this, like, just take it back to basics.
Exactly. So I've got 2 phrases that I sometimes use. They're as cheesy as you like, but one of them's a grammatical nightmare as well, but they're really accurate. The first one is, if it ran, swam, grew, or flew, then eat it, everything else leave behind. And the other one, the one that is completely annihilating the British language, the English language, real food doesn't contain ingredients. Real food is ingredients. I know it's not exactly it's not exactly a TED Talk worthy, but I mean it kind of illustrates the point, doesn't it? Just strip it down to basics, and it's exactly what we said right at the beginning. You get back to whole foods.
Totally.
If you're just building your diet, what I will say to people, every time you look at your plate, is there some slow burning carbs on there? Is there some protein on there? Is there several different colours of veg? Yeah, happy days. You're doing all right. Fine. That's all you need to worry about.
And like you said, simple in a sauce, blend in those veg into that as much as possible.
You've got to give it flavour, because I mean, even as long as I've been doing it, I still don't sit there and think, raw spinach, lovely. Do you know what I mean? You've got to make it taste good, right? You've got to give it some flavor. And, you know, because you can make this stuff sing when you really know how to bring this food to life. I mean, you can be spending the rest of your life eating curries, pizzas, burgers, pasta dishes. You can do it all. You can reinvent it. You can create it in a healthy way and have the best diet in the world in terms of the enjoyment factor. And you can be doing your health some good at the same time.
Exactly. So we don't need to be missing out on anything.
No, not
we
at
just
all.
need to kind of learn the basics and start getting a bit creative in the kitchen again.
Completely.
Like, you've actually inspired me, because I have gone through a little bit of a
I want
slump.
to see photographic evidence.
I know. You know, I have to say, this year I've really focused on work, and I've gone through a little bit of a slump of my cooking. Do you know, the whole of feeling worn out? Oh, I've not got time, you know, that type of thing.
But then go back to what you were saying before. You're fueling yourself properly.
Exactly. So you've really inspired me to go, you know what? I can do this. I have got time for this. It's just about a bit of preparation and everything that you've said. I'm like, oh, I like that. I like that. And I love putting all spices into food as well. So that's perfect. So it's actually given me inspiration, and we should be excited about the food that we're cooking and that we're putting in our body. Yeah. Shouldn't we?
And really? You can make it really convenient as well. I mean, like an average weeknight meal for me, because, you know, I was running around all over the place and doing different bits, will be, I like put some veg in the steamer, get like some new potatoes or something, cut them in half, bit of olive oil, maybe some different spices and stuff, bang them in the air fryer. Yeah. And then just cook a bit of meat or fish to go with it. Yeah. Bring it together, bam, done, easy.
When you say it like that, it is actually simple. I think we try and overcomplicate it sometimes.
Back to basics. Yeah.
I love a slow cooker.
Oh, great. Yeah. The house smells amazing when you come back in. Like, oh.
So good. Yeah. I do love an air fryer. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, no, you've given me inspiration. And also, like, on your Instagram, you do some amazing, amazing videos and absolute great content. So, what one piece of advice you would, I know we've given so much, but one piece of advice of people to kind of start just to look after themselves that you would give to listeners now? Go on.
Change one thing. Yeah. And it's like, because I've worked with so many people that try to just change everything overnight, especially, like, you know, when it comes to New Year's, you know, January the 1st, like, I'm going to give up smoking. I'm only going to drink once a month. I'm going to go to the gym every day. I'm going to become a raw food yogi. And it's like, okay. So start with one single thing that you know that you can change, right? One single habit, okay, with your diet. So whether that is, like, right, okay, I'm going to stop snacking on chocolate and instead snack on a piece of fruit instead. Yeah. Or I'm going to make sure that I have a really good dense salad a day. Or I'm going to make sure at least one of my meals is a good home-cooked meal with a variety of veg in it. Whatever it is. Yeah. Or if you're right at the beginning, say, okay, I'm going to make sure I eat a plant today. Yeah. Whatever it is, change that one thing first. Do it over and over again every single day, until it becomes the norm. Once it becomes the norm, keep on doing it, but then change another thing. Yeah. And then another thing, and then another. Yeah. Whilst that might seem like baby steps, when you look back over 6 or 12 months, you'll realize that your lifestyle has changed drastically, but the whole process of getting there has been very, very comfortable and sustainable. It's sustainable momentum. That's what it's all about.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And that's how we habit stack. That is how we do
habit stacking, all about
That's
that.
how we do it, innit? So why not do that with our nutrition?
With everything, yeah.
Oh, I love that. So we will put all information, how to get hold of you, how to watch all your Instagrams, but also one of your books. Which one would you recommend people to start off with
Blimey,
first?
It would be like choosing your favourite child.
Which one? Just to start people off.
I'd say there'd be 3 possible contenders there.
Okay.
I've written 20, so there's a few.
Okay.
There's one called How to Cook Healthily, which is almost like you kind of, you know, you get like the Delia's How to Cook kind of thing. It's like that, but for creating healthy food. Yeah. So that's a really good one. Another one would be one called The Power of 3, which is really encompassing my overall philosophy on long-term good eating habits. Or there's the book that went with the Eat, Shop, Save series, and that's really good segue, especially for people that find that maybe time or budget is getting in the way, because there's loads of options. There's whole chapters based around that. So if if you don't feel confident in the kitchen, or you're always rushing off your feet, or if you're really trying to do this on a limited budget, then we've totally got you covered in that.
Oh, absolutely amazing. I have loved loved this chat today.
I
And
feel like we've just got started, just got warmed up.
I know,
Yeah.
I've loved
Well, that was
this
the
chat.
intro.
That was the
Okay,
intro.
yeah.
Well, we might be coming back for part two.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, we just want to give our listeners and viewers, because the clients that I come across on a day-to-day basis, they kind of just don't know where to start. And that's what I wanted this chat to be, is for people to start, to feel
Yes.
confident, to just take that first step.
Yeah.
And then let's see how they are in 6 months' time and just build on that. And I think if we can do that for people through this chat, them listening, I think our job's done here. That's what we should be able to do, is help
plant
people.
one seed.
Yeah, just one seed, just to change one thing and to build on that. Because the amount of people I just don't know where to start. There's so much information out there. I'm just so confused. So I just go back to what I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I feel like we've really kind of got that out with this episode. So yeah, but thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
It's been so interesting, and definitely gonna have a chat with how we can work together.
Cool. Absolutely.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.